I wish I could say I didn't know what to expect as I pulled into the church parking lot, but I did. My brother never does anything without fanfare, especially when family is involved. The Hayes family ceremonies always have this manufactured sense of importance, catered food, color-coded seating, and an undercurrent of competition so thick you could choke on it. Birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, even the occasional retirement party, always a spectacle, always someone left feeling less than. This time, it was some convoluted celebration of legacy, a gathering my brother Michael had organized to honor our late father. There was a big glossy invitation with scripted gold letters, except mine had arrived weeks late, the RSVP already past due. I almost didn't come, but then my mother called and said, "Your brother's expecting you. Please don't cause trouble." Like it would be me who caused a scene. As I walked up the steps, I tried to keep my head high, clutching the invite in my coat pocket like a badge of survival. The foyer was already buzzing with our relatives, cousins, uncles, people I barely recognized from holiday cards. A white tablecloth covered the check-in table, where my brother's wife, Karen, presided with her clipboard in perfect posture. "Name, please," she asked, smiling like I was a stranger. "It's me, Sam," I said, forcing a polite nod. "Sam Hayes." Her eyes skimmed the list. I watched her fingers slide down each name, Michael Hayes, Andrew Hayes, even Aunt Linda's third husband, until she reached the bottom. She frowned, flipped a page, then looked up at me. "I'm sorry, you're not on the list." For a second, I thought she was joking. I even half smiled, expecting her to laugh and check my name off with a flourish. But she didn't. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, scanning for Michael. I heard him before I saw him, his booming laugh cutting through the polite chatter. He strode over, arms wide as if to greet a beloved guest. "What's the holdup here?" he called. Karen tilted the clipboard so he could see. He looked at it, then at me, his smile flickering just long enough for me to see the calculation behind his eyes. Well, guess we had a little oversight. He made a show of patting me on the back, loud enough for everyone to notice. "Sam, you know how these things go. We can't keep track of every RSVP, can we?" People were turning now, looking our way. I tried to swallow the flush creeping up my neck. "I got the invitation," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "It just came late." Michael shrugged, a perfect picture of nonchalance. "Well, if you're not on the list, you're not on the list." His voice was light, but there was steel behind it. Karen's smile was frozen in place. "Maybe you can wait over there while we sort this out?" I looked at the row of folding chairs lined up along the wall, the way people pretended not to notice me. In that moment, I felt 12 years old again, back when Michael would forget to save me a seat at the dinner table, when I learned that being his sibling meant learning how to disappear. I stood there, surrounded by family but feeling completely alone, the ceremony beginning to swirl around me, my name unspoken, my presence unacknowledged. I stood off to the side, hands clenched tight in my pockets, every instinct screaming at me to turn around and leave. But I didn't. I told myself it would only make things worse. Besides, that's what Michael wanted, another story to tell, another punchline at my expense. Guests kept arriving, the entryway filling with laughter and perfume and the sound of shoes clicking against the tiled floor. Every so often, someone would give me a polite nod, quickly looking away, as if my invisibility might rub off on them. I caught my mother's eye from across the room, but she just mouthed, "Later," and turned back to her conversation, her hands fluttering anxiously at her sides. The ceremony space was decorated like a wedding, with blue and gold streamers and a massive Hayes Legacy banner stretched above the stage. People took their seats, their names taped neatly to every chair. Every chair except for the handful stacked near the wall, overflow, just in case, as Karen called them. Michael had taken his place at the podium, a spot he seemed born for. He cleared his throat, tapped the microphone, and flashed a practiced grin. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today as we honor the man who shaped us all. Family is everything, at least, that's what Dad always said." Laughter rippled through the crowd. I stayed near the entrance, clutching my invitation like a lifeline. Karen made a point of bustling past me, clipboard pressed to her chest, whispering to someone nearby. I saw my cousin lean over and snicker. No one offered me a seat. Then, in front of everyone, Michael's eyes landed on me. "And of course, we have folks joining us who couldn't be bothered to RSVP, he called out, voice booming through the speakers. "Hope you can find a place, Sam." A few heads turned. My cheeks burned. For a second, I wished I could vanish. The laughter wasn't cruel exactly, but it stung, 1,000 small wounds from a lifetime of being the afterthought. My brother didn't need to say it outright. He wanted everyone to know that I was an inconvenience, a mistake he'd tolerated out of some vague familial obligation. Someone from the back, Uncle Dave, always quick with a joke, chimed in. Next time, show up on time and you'll get a seat, Sammy. More laughter, louder now. Even the ones who pitted me were smiling behind their hands. Michael grinned at me, holding my gaze. You know, we all have roles to play. Some of us just take a little longer to figure ours out. The room buzzed, the energy sharp and electric. I tried to steady my breathing, biting the inside of my cheek until I tasted blood. It wasn't just about a chair. It was about every missed birthday, every ignored phone call, every time Michael had been the golden child and I'd been the footnote. I forced myself to smile, a thin, brittle thing, and nodded as if to say, you win. But inside, something hard and cold settled in my chest. I realized then that I would not forget this, not the way the room looked at me, not the way my own brother laughed as if my humiliation was a joke worth sharing. The ceremony had barely begun, and already I wanted it to be over. I kept my eyes on the carpet, willing myself to become invisible as Michael launched into his speech, an endless parade of anecdotes about our father, the family's legacy. All the lessons learned under his guidance. My name wasn't mentioned. It never was, not when Michael was in control. The room felt smaller with every passing minute. The air, thick with the scent of flowers and catered coffee, pressed down on me like a weight. I told myself it didn't matter, that I'd learned how to be on the outside looking in. But each laugh, each side glance, carved a little deeper. Just as I started to count the seconds, thinking of excuses to slip out, the doors at the back of the hall swung open. Every head turned. I looked up out of reflex, and what I saw made the room shift in an instant. A military man, sharply dressed in full regalia, strode in with the sort of quiet authority that needed no announcement. Medals glinted across his chest. His stride was crisp, measured, practiced, someone used to command. I recognized the insignia on his shoulder before anyone else seemed to, and my stomach tightened. A general. Not just any officer, but someone high up, the kind of guest that would make even Michael's ego falter. Whispers rippled through the rows. People sat straighter, the energy in the room tightening like a drawn wire. Karen was the first to move, setting down her clipboard and hurrying toward him, her voice pitched a little higher than usual. General, welcome. We weren't expecting you, sir. He barely glanced at her, eyes scanning the crowd, sharp and searching. Then, with a nod, he stepped past her, moving down the aisle, looking over every guest as though he was searching for someone in particular. Michael stammered from the podium, "It's an honor to have you here, General. Please, we have a seat for you at the front." His hand gestured toward the few empty chairs, the best seats, reserved for family and close friends. But the general didn't sit. He kept walking, I still searching. My heart pounded. For a second, I was sure he was looking for Michael, or maybe even my father's memory, the man we were supposedly here to honor. Instead, his gaze landed right on me. He stopped. The whole room seemed to freeze. I felt the eyes of 100 relatives burn into my back. The general nodded, then addressed the room, his voice even, practiced, and yet somehow personal. "I see Admiral Hayes has arrived." A beat of silence followed. The words hung in the air, confusing everyone but me. I felt the floor tilt, as if gravity had suddenly changed. The general stepped toward me, offering a small, respectful salute. "Welcome, Admiral. It's good to see you." For the first time all day, no one laughed. Michael's hand fell from the microphone. Karen's mouth was half open. Whispers crackled through the room, each one tinged with shock and confusion. No one in my family, not even my mother, had ever used my rank in front of these people. I had kept my world, my accomplishments, apart from them. I had never thought they'd care. I never expected it would matter. But now, with the general's arrival, everything began to shift. The silence after the general's words was absolute, like the room had suddenly dropped 100 degrees. I felt every set of eyes on me. My brother, frozen at the podium, looked like he'd just been punched in the gut. He recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. The general nodded to the stunned crowd. "Admiral Hayes should be seated front row," he said, voice carrying easily. No need for the microphone. He motioned with an open hand, waiting. No one moved at first. I caught my mother's wide-eyed stare, mouth opening, closing, then opening again. Karen was the first to snap out of it. She stumbled toward the front, nudging aside the small, reserved sign and fumbling with a stack of programs. "Of course, sir. Right away, sir. Please, Admiral Hayes, this way." People shifted in their seats, rearranging themselves in awkward silence as Karen led me, almost by the elbow, toward the front row. I felt my heart hammering, not with fear or humiliation now, but with a strange new heat, something like vindication, something I wasn't used to letting myself feel. As I passed by, relatives who'd barely acknowledged me all morning stared openly. Some offered nervous smiles. A few had the decency to look embarrassed. Uncle Dave, so quick with a jab earlier, actually stood up as I neared, nodding in awkward respect. The general followed behind, giving Michael a polite, expectant look. My brother swallowed, gripping the podium with white knuckles. For once, he seemed unsure what to say. I took my seat, right in the center of the front row, with the general sitting just to my left. The audience seemed to exhale all at once, a collective release of tension. Michael tried to recover, clearing his throat and shuffling his notes. Well, as I was saying, family is everything. We're honored to have such distinguished guests with us today. Especially, he paused, voice catching. Especially Admiral Hayes. There it was. My name, my title, finally spoken in this room full of people who had always seen me as the spare, the extra, the afterthought. The general nodded again, face giving nothing away, and the ceremony continued, but the energy in the room was different now. Every time Michael tried to regain his footing, he stumbled, tripping over introductions, missing punchlines that used to land so easily. His confidence had cracked, and everyone could see it. I watched my brother struggle, feeling something I couldn't name. Not quite triumph, not quite satisfaction. Maybe just the relief of finally being seen for who I really was. For the rest of the ceremony, no one ignored me. I felt the weight of their glances, their whispered questions, their recalculations. I could see it in the way my mother dabbed her eyes, in the way my cousins shifted in their seats, in the way Michael never quite looked me in the eye. Everything had changed with a single sentence from a man in uniform. After the ceremony, the room seemed suspended in an awkward silence. The usual buzz of small talk, laughter, and clinking glasses was replaced by hushed conversations and cautious glances in my direction. The shift was palpable. What was once an invisible barrier between me and the family had become a spotlight, blinding and relentless. Michael sat slumped in a corner, his usual bravado drained, replaced by a tense stillness. His hands trembled slightly as he clutched his drink, a rare sign of vulnerability from the man who had always held the family's attention. I could feel the weight of every eye on me, some filled with surprise, others with guilt, and a few with something bordering on envy. It was strange, almost surreal, to be the subject of this new kind of attention, especially from people who had spent years dismissing me. My mother approached quietly, her eyes glistening with tears. "Sam," she whispered, "I had no idea. We never knew. Why didn't you tell us?" I looked away, the years of silence and distance pressing down. "Because I didn't want to hear what I heard today," I said softly. "Because no matter what I did, it never seemed to matter here." She nodded, a silent apology in her gaze. The general, still standing nearby, gave me a respectful nod. "You've earned your place, Admiral. Not just here, but anywhere you choose to stand." His words echoed in the quiet room, a reminder that my worth was not determined by family approval, but by the life I had built on my own terms. Michael caught my eye across the room. His hand twitched, and I saw a flicker of something I hadn't expected, regret, maybe shame. But there was no apology, no attempt to bridge the gap that had stretched between us for so long. The ceremony had ended, but for me, a new chapter was just beginning. The legacy I inherited was no longer defined by family politics or whispered exclusions. It was my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the power to rewrite the story. The weeks after the ceremony were a strange mix of distance and curiosity. I kept my routine: early mornings, military briefings, late-night strategy calls. But the family's whispers followed me like shadows. At first, no one reached out. I wasn't surprised. My life, my achievements, had been invisible to them for so long. The revelation of my rank, my title, Admiral Hayes, was like a sudden spotlight revealing just how little they'd known about me, or maybe how little they'd cared. Then came the questions. Careful at first, like stepping on fragile ice. "Is it true you're an admiral?" my niece asked, eyes wide. "How come no one ever mentioned this before?" Aunt Linda said, half in disbelief. My mother's phone calls were hesitant, filled with awkward pauses and unspoken apologies. Michael, however, remained silent. He never asked, never congratulated, never acknowledged what had changed. It was as if the truth threatened the carefully constructed narrative he'd lived with for years, the story where he was the successful son, the favorite, the one who mattered. I realized something else. The family's rejection wasn't about me. It was about fear. Fear of what they didn't understand. Fear of the distance I'd built between us. Fear of a legacy that wasn't theirs to claim. One evening, I found myself staring at the framed photo on my desk. Dad, young and proud, standing with Michael and me. I traced my finger over the glass, remembering the unspoken tensions, the expectations, the disappointments. I wasn't just the overlooked sibling anymore. I was a man with a story, a purpose, and a place in the world that no one could take away. That night, I made a decision. I wouldn't wait for the family to come to me. I would step forward, claim my space, and rewrite what it meant to be a Hayes. Because sometimes, the hardest battles aren't fought on distant seas. They're fought at home. The next family gathering was different. This time, I wasn't just a guest trying to fit in. I was a force they could no longer ignore. When I walked through the door, heads turned, some in surprise, some in discomfort. Michael's eyes met mine for a brief second before he looked away, his usual confidence slipping. I took the seat at the front, where the general had insisted I belong. No longer invisible, no longer sidelined. I was part of the legacy now, on my own terms. I could see the whispers ripple through the room. Curiosity mixed with unease. Later, when the crowd had thinned, Michael approached. His voice was low, almost hesitant. "Sam, I didn't know. I never asked. I guess I was afraid." I looked at him, the brother I had once admired, now a stranger tangled in guilt. "It wasn't about you, Michael. It was never about proving anything to you." He nodded, swallowing the shame that hung between us. I realized then that legacy wasn't just about titles or recognition. It was about standing firm in who you are, even when no one else believes in you. As I left that night, I felt a quiet strength I hadn't known before. The family story had shifted, and so had mine. From forgotten to honored, from sidelined to front and center. This was my legacy,